You need a sorcerer's build with insane map clearing ability, as well as incredible single target damage, all without needing to have any crazy unique gear that costs a ton of exalts, or spending hundreds of exalts on gear, as well as being able to maintain high survivability. Then I got the sorcerer's build for you. What's up world, it's Utopia back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Path of Exile 2. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. I'm going to get into everything, the skills, the passive tree, all of that stuff there. We'll go over everything, including my future plan with this build. I know it's taken me quite some time to put this one out there, but I've done a ton of reworking. I've bought a ton of different gear. I've experimented like crazy, trying to figure out how I can actually get this build to work without needing to spend hundreds of exalts. And honestly, aren't you tired of just seeing people post builds with hundreds of exalts worth of gear, when more than likely they went through alternative methods to receive those exalts? In fact, you could do this build without any exalts at all, and you'll be just fine. Let's just jump right into it. How does this build work? We'll go into everything that coincides there, then I'll go over to the skill abilities, and we'll cover everything else. So first up, we do have resistances near cap with most of the stuff, so we are getting a lot of that there. We are working on our mana regeneration. We have a high shield build here, as well as decently high mana, and that's going to come from gear. To get this gear, it's very easy. I'm going to show you how to get most gear very easily, and everything that I showcase to you either cost 1 exalt or nothing. So as long as you have like 1 or 2, maybe even 4, 5, or 6 exalts, you'll be able to do this build just fine. But you really don't need to have any of that, especially if you already have your gear worked up, you already have good resistances. The only piece of item you technically could really use is this one right here, which is the 3 Dragons Solid Mask. It sold to me for 1 exalt, and I even have the highest elemental resistances, which I will show you how to do very easily. Everything with this build coincides together in order to create a lightning build that can clear very fast. We're not using spark anymore, we are using lightning warp. Now I've gone through a bunch of build videos to put this one together, but this is my own passive tree, this is my own creation to use essentially free gear, as every video I've seen, they have several hundreds worth of exalted gear, whether it's 300-400 or even near 1,000 exalts just to get the gear that they have, which is just absolutely insane. And it irks me they put the build guides out like that, knowing that the commoner is not going to be able to get that. Okay, anyways, let's just jump onto the skills. We'll get into the passive tree and everything else. Alright, let's just get onto the abilities off of my ranting there, going over some of the stuff there. So first off, none of this top stuff matters, aside from Sigil of Power. It's going to be a nice little buff there that we're going to place down. As you see, I do have it on swap. If you don't know how to swap abilities here, or to have it swapped here, when you click on a gem slot, you'll go and uncheck number 2 for which abilities you want to cast, so that way when we switch, it'll go back to our regular main ability there. Next up, we have Ball Lightning, and we're taking Unleash. Then we're going to go and take Scattered Shot, and we're going to take Arcane Tempo. We really want this to help out as fast cast speed. This is not your damage ability, this is just where you're warping to do AoE damage. Next up, we have Mana Remnants, although you would want to trade this out for, at least eventually, you want to trade this out for Blink. If you have 220 Spirit, you can do so. The way you can get Spirit very easily is by getting it on your gear. So right now I have 48 on my chest piece, and then I have Amulet, I have around 59. So you kind of have to get Spirit some way, somehow through your gear. More than likely your chest and your amulet will give you a little bit of Spirit. Next up here we have Cast on Freeze. Yes, we are taking Cast on Freeze for this build, and that's why we take the 3-headed dragons, because lightning damage from hits contribute to freeze buildup, and the reason why is because Shock does not cause enough buildup here. Cast on Freeze does a lot more. In those slots, we are doing Lightning Conduit. That's going to be our big AoE damage. And we're taking Inspiration as well as Impetus. Next up, we do take Spark. It's a smaller ability. You're not really going to utilize this a ton. I use this on smaller maps, or at least maps that are lower tier sometimes, because it does a lot of spark damage in between. You can also write this up on the boss and do some decent damage if you're running out of mana or running low. But overall, we're going to take Controlled Destruction and Acceleration. Next up is our massive damage ability here, which is Lightning Warp. And we're going to take Soul Drain, so we recover some mana there. We're also going to take Magnified Effect and Strip Away. Eventually I will break into the 4 abilities. I've had the worst luck on this one. In fact, I've spent like nearly 10 of these Vault Orbs trying to get this to a 4-statter, and at this point I might as well just buy a greater Jewel Orb, but I'm still working on it. Next up we have Conductivity, and that is our debuff there when we do place that. But just to showcase Lightning Warp, that is where we essentially teleport to these balls. You'll also see that on their little headpiece, you can teleport to them and that'll do a ton of AoE damage. Next up here, we're taking Conductivity and then Heightened Curse, as well as our Focus Curse. This is just our curse ability to do good damage to bosses. We also have Lightning Conduit. This is what we're doing with Cast on Freeze. As you saw there, we had Lightning Conduit in there, but we also use this ability to do some single target damage. That is a very good one. We're taking Elemental Focus, Super Critical, as well as Ambush. Now the way that you want to get Lightning Conduit to work is that you cast out your ball of lightning, you teleport to it, you do a little bit of AoE damage on the floor here, and then you pop your Rune of Power, and then you pop your Mana Tempest, and then you'll be set up for that AoE damage. The way that coincides in with your passive tree here is that, and I don't even have it really, but I still do a decent AoE damage, is that you want to have targets can be affected by 2 of your shocks at the same time, and that will get you some bonus damage there once you get through here, but I don't have it. I need to work on my ascendancies, but that is just overall kind of how that works and coincides together. Next up here, we do take Mana Tempest. That's going to give us some extra damage here, but it will use up a lot of mana. And then we have Premeditation to increase that damage by 15%. Next up, we have Archmage. That is a nice buff here. We're taking Lightning Mastery. That's a +1 level of supported skills there. We're going to boost that up a little bit. And then we're also going to take the 30% increased mana regeneration rate. This is actually going to add, if you didn't know, you can have Archmage on. You see right now we have 195. If we take this off and we put this in our gear piece, we now only have 183. So that does actually add to it and does give us a 30% increase. Now the reason why we want so much mana regeneration, if you look on our passive tree, we'll go over there very, very quickly. We're jumping over to our actual passive tree. We're coming through here and jumping in, and we're grabbing all this stuff for critical hits. We're also grabbing a lot of mana recovery. We're going to need this like crazy because we are taking Mind over Matter. Now the reason for this, now I've seen a lot of builds, some people will use jewels to achieve this. They also have to come all the way down here. There's a bunch of stuff here, but this is kind of just the short end of it. And the reason being is because the jewels that you will need to get mana taken instead of life, that's going to cost you upwards of 200 to 300 Exalted Orbs. If you have that, maybe go follow that guide and do that. If you don't have 200 to 300 Exalted Orbs, this is the way to do that without that and have a good amount of mana shield, because you won't have any shield at all, and you also have a good amount of mana. And this in combination, we have around 6k life in total because of regeneration, maybe a little bit more, about 7k. So it is very good for resistances, as well as a few other things here. So we also have we're taking our max shield. We want a lot of max shield here. This helmet one is pretty good. It doesn't really work well with the helmet that we have to use, unfortunately, but I would still take it because it's 70%. We're also taking a bunch of mana shield regeneration here, or at least the shield in total, and then we're also taking lightning damage. We're going up here, taking some intelligence, again, increased our shield. It's even more. We're also taking a ton of mana regeneration, and then we're also doing 3% increased spell damage per 100 mana. This is really good because the more that we build up our mana, the more we are actually generating damage. Now, if you did take Mind over Matter, and you also took the Chaos damage or the Chaos Inoculation CI, you'd have to build up a ton more shield, around 5,000 or 6,000, which would then convert to your mana, and then you would have it convert back. But you're going to need an amulet, which costs around 40 exalts, so that's why we're not taking it right now, because it is a ton of investment there. Because you're going to have to take Eldritch Battery, which you're converting into here, and then you're also taking this one, which converts back. There's a bunch of conversions here, so we're converting into everything. It's like 3 different conversions plus an amulet. There's a lot going on there, but you're going to need a lot of exalts to do so. This is the main passive skill tree. This will work with a exactly level 1 gear, if you want to call it. Gear that's not going to cost you much. Speaking of that, let's go over the gear very quickly and how that coincides to everything. So we have the 3-headed dragons. As I said, you're going to need this one or 3 dragons, as it does do a lot for your cast on freeze. You don't necessarily need it. If you want more shield, you can do that. In fact, one of my other helmets gives me 1400 more shield. So it does have a give and take there, but this does do really well with Lightning Warp and clearing maps. Next up here, we have our focus. Now, there is a reason why you might want to take a different focus here. However, this gives me a lot more mana, and this also gives me a lot more shield. If I do swap out for this one, it does give me a ton. I'm going to showcase to you how you can actually go about obtaining some of this gear, even just gear in general. There is a Path of Exile website. When you do head to that, you can click through filters, you can search through, you can change the stat requirements. You can also set it to something on the thing itself, where you can change it to 1 exalt orb. That's what I like to do. So if you look here under trade offers, we go to buyout price, we can set it to Exalted Orb, and we can put the max to 1. So whatever you want, if you want the 3-headed dragon, or 3 dragons, keep going 3-headed, the 3 dragons solid mask, when you search for it, you can see that it is 1 Exalted Orb and will not be any higher than that. Another cool tip here, if you want to search through, is if you click on the resource that you want. So right here, this is one of the main ones, which is the elemental resistances. If you want the highest count of that, if you click on that, you can see that someone listed 3 minutes ago for 20%. It's even higher than mine currently. These are really hard to obtain. These are really hard to get, at least for me. So I'll even try to whisper this guy. All you gotta do is click that, and that'll whisper them in game. That'll send them a little whisper icon, so it's very cool there. But yeah, you can search by this. There's tons of different filters here. You can add stat filters, so if you want your max mana, max life, whatever have you, you can enter that there. You can also change the requirements here, so when you're looking for a chess piece, if you need something that doesn't have any strength or any dex on it, you can put 0 for those and then research, and you'll find that, as you see, we don't have that option here with the 3 dragons, but when we go back, we can just click on resistances and set it to the top and then try to get one. Now, these are being sought after like crazy, even before I make this video, are going to be very hard to get, at least the 20% resistances. I've struggled. If you can, I hope you can, but there is some stuff there with that. Even this one's really nice. This one has 22% mana regeneration rate on it. I would love to get this one if I could, but more than likely this person's not going to answer me, as they probably already got a ton of invites or DMs or messages. So you have to do kind of work for that one if you do want the dragon head with a high resistance rate. Overall, it should about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.